Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A. So let's go ahead and knock this out. All right, first question. You're constantly stating that exercises that compress the spine build the most muscle mass in the body. Other than squat, deadlift, and overhead press, do other standing exercises and weighted chin-ups have the ability to load your spine as much if they're done frequently enough? Okay, you're misunderstanding some of this. Outside of some basic benefits for bone density in your spine, the actual loading of the spine itself is not a good thing. Meaning, the axial loading, as it's called, actually interferes with recovery. So your body has a finite amount of axial loading that it can handle. Now, granted, that is subject to changes in work capacity, recovery, lifestyle, things like that. But the actual compression of the spine is not the actual good thing. That's actually a bad thing in terms of recovery. It's just that it's unavoidable with the best exercises. So you shouldn't be looking at exercises saying, how much can I compress my spine? It's the fact that exercises in which you are standing on your feet, in which in theory you have the ability to fall over, have the most potential for putting muscle on your body, because they involve the most muscles through your entire body. In other words, a standing press has more muscle building potential than a seated press. Right? A standing barbell row, even one rowing off the floor, actually the rowing off the floor has its own benefits, separate, has more muscle building potential than a seated machine row. Then we get into exercises that cannot be done anyway but standing. Obviously you're thinking squat and deadlift. What about various cleans, snatches, hang pulls, high pulls, all of that stuff? Those sort of exercises, they all have, when included into an overall program, have a tremendous muscle building benefit. And when you start looking at it, I mean, squat, deadlift variations, overhead press variations, Olympic lift variations, and again, even like other things like high pulls and all sorts of stuff, hang cleans, all these other standing exercises have an enormous muscle and strength building potential. And I think that's the other thing that you need to consider when you're looking to get stronger and be more athletic. Standing exercises need to take priority. Standing exercises need to take priority. That is really going to be your bread and butter. They're going to provide the most benefit to your overall strength, total body muscle mass, and athleticism. And it's just simply pointing out to people understanding that it's too much focus on body parts instead of saying, hey, can I make my whole body grow? It's kind of a negative direction I think the bodybuilding world has taken the so-called fitness world, because that's not fitness or athleticism. Again, that's kind of a side note, but you're misunderstanding the fact that it's not the actual compression of the spine that causes the benefits. It's the fact that you use every muscle in your body just about to some extent for standing lifts. All right, next question. Hey Jason, what do you think of the T-bar row versus Pendley row if you already have a vertical pulling movement? Thanks, coach. Well, if you're already doing a vertical pulling movement, I don't think you need T-bar rows at all. I think Pendley rows, or any row variation in which you pull off the floor, and that's kind of hard to do with a T-bar row, to reset on the floor on every rep. You can. It's just much easier with barbell rows, standard barbell rows. It's far easier to set up and execute. I don't think there's any reason, because again, you're already getting all those pulling muscles in the upper back developed, and then you have the added benefit of any sort of pull from the floor is going to help you build erectors, hips, glutes, hamstrings, all that a little more, and it's going to train you to use them better in conjunction with your lats. And in other words, it's training you to utilize your entire thoracicolumbar sling as one unit. That is going to carry over to things like deadlifts and other exercises. So when we're looking at exercise selection, again, this is one thing I mentioned with training minimalism. Training minimalism, by the way, means low exercise selection, not low volume. There's some misconceptions there. You can train for 10 hours a day and still be on a minimalist program if you only do 6 exercises. But the point is that you need to be looking at, instead of, hey, I want this exercise to build a given muscle, of what are the other benefits to this exercise besides just the primary movers involved. And I think that's an important consideration when you are picking exercises. And so, again, you already have a vertical movement that doesn't pull from the floor, that will build your lats and biceps and rear delts and all that to some extent. Although, the angles involved with most rowing is going to hit rear delts and things a bit better, traps a bit better. But I don't think the T-bar row would be your best choice. I think you would get better carryover to some other exercises and more benefits from some sort of row from the floor with a barbell. And Pendley rows would obviously qualify. But any sort of row from the floor, even different sorts of cheat rows, will give you that also. So overall, I'd lean in that direction. Not saying if you do T-bar rows that you're doing it wrong or you're dumb or anything else. I just think that there are some additional merits to an actual barbell row off the floor, as far as, again, specific carryover to some of your other exercises and creating a synergy in your training. All right, next question. What do you think of Dan John and Pavel Tsatsoulines' ideas of using only 45s and 25 as opposed to microloading? I don't think it's a good idea at all, and I like Pavel Tsatsoulines. But what is one of the biggest, absolute biggest benefits you have to big barbell lifts? The fact that, number one, a lot of them allow you to train your entire body. Number two, you have the ability to micro load for fine-tuning your programming. The actual ability to micro load is an advantage. So just saying, well, because I just want to be more hardcore and force myself to make big jumps and only, add weight when I'm capable of adding 50 pounds at a time, because that's what's going to happen when you add 25s from whatever your rep range or whatever you're doing, I think you're shortchanging yourself. I think you're missing out on a lot of opportunities, and I think that you're missing out on one of the biggest advantages of why barbells are the superior way to train. They really are. And that microloading is one of the top reasons why they are. And by throwing that away, I think that's kind of silly, and it's doing it pretty arbitrarily, purely to kind of have a more hardcore mentality in mind. And you know what I think's hardcore? I think hardcore is getting really, really, really strong. That's what I think's hardcore. Just me personally. And, microloading is a very valuable tool towards that. All right, next question. Best workouts for tennis players to gain strength and speed but not put on much weight since you have to be quick. Well, if you don't want to put on weight, then stay in caloric maintenance. All right, here's the misconception that you have, is that muscle gain is automatically going to make you slower. That's absolutely not true. It is actually possible to put on 20 pounds of muscle and increase your speed. Matter of how you train. Are you training in a way that maximizes on your explosive potential, which is largely genetic? Are you maximizing your explosive potential from your training and all the muscle that you put on? That's what you need to be asking yourself. So here's what I would say. Again, tennis player, you need to be explosive. You need to get faster, or at the very least lose any speed or power with the muscle you put on, so that at least your speed stays the same and your strength goes up, therefore your power increases. That's what you're looking for, right? Why don't you just do mostly explosive type movements? Squats obviously are important. Do squats. Do power snatches, do power cleans, do push presses, do any rows you're going to do, again, from the floor, so they have an explosive element, a lot of pulling from the floor. Explosive movements, that's your key. If you do that and you maximize your explosiveness, again, within your potential, you will not get slower from gaining 10, 15, or 20 pounds of muscle mass. It will not happen. In fact, you will possibly and very probably will get faster. Pick your exercises wisely. Don't train like a bodybuilder. Train like an athlete. All right, next question and last question of the week. Could you hit maximal muscular potential on a Bulgarian light routine? And I had someone tell him, no, it's a peaking program. That's not true. There are people who are ultra jacked who train this way year round. And let me ask you a question. Since there is what happens to push through various stalls, you don't just stay on just a training max every day. You might for a period of time to maximize your maximum strength potential, but invariably behind your daily minimums on this sort of system, you start adding in back off work. That's the way every coach has people do it who stay on it long term. Let me ask you a question. If you have 3 big exercises that you're hitting every day, that you train to a heavy single, and then you do some back off work with, and you build up to 2 triples every day. And then you have some minor accessory work that you throw in. You know, obviously some different accessories could be your Olympic lifts, rows, whatever. So you're doing at least 3 big lifts plus accessory work that you every week on each of those 3 lifts, you are hitting 6 max effort sets, and you're doing 12 triples with a fairly high intensity on probably up to 3 exercises that train almost your entire body, and one of them will definitely be squats. Plus, you're able to get in some extra volume with your accessory work. That's still Bulgarian light. That's how everyone runs it. Why wouldn't you be able to reach your maximum muscle potential? I mean, you also see guys doing this program who are hitting 400 benches, 700 squats, 800 deadlifts. You telling me those guys haven't reached their maximum muscle potential? Have you looked at some of those guys? So my question would be, how could you not? Unless you were really lazy with it. Of course you can. Because you have not only a maximum strength component, but you do have a volume component involved to help you push through various plateaus in the training. There are plenty of jacked guys who train this way. Yes, you can reach your maximum muscle potential. Probably not if you do nothing but a max single every day and never change from that for the next 5 years. But that's not how anyone actually runs the program purely in the long term. It's a good way to start the program at any given time, but eventually you will add additional volume. You'll stimulate maximum growth just fine. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.